Hello, my name is Kat Schupler, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can support our multilingual learners with writing. So, writing is one of the most challenging forms of language to develop and can take many years to become proficient in. Writing is complex and requires oral language skills, and for our MLs, they are acquiring the second language and learning new content, all while trying to navigate culturally and linguistically diverse topics that they may be unfamiliar with. In order to reduce the cognitive demands for students, teachers can use strategy instruction and self regulated strategy development. SRSD is basically a way to make writing feel more manageable for students by taking some of the load off their working memory. With SRSD, we directly teach specific writing strategies for different genres, and we build in lots of scaffolds while gradually handing some more responsibility over from the teacher to the student. The model has 6 stages, but they're flexible. We can stretch them out, shorten them, or even skip pieces for students who don't need as much support. So here's how the 6 stages play out in practice. Develop background knowledge. We start by building students' understanding of the target genre and introducing self regulation tools like goal setting and self talk. Students read and talk about strong model texts. Discussion. Next, we openly talk with students about why we're using these strategies and how the mnemonic device can actually help them. The goal here is buy in. We really want them to see the value and commit to trying it. Modeling. Then the teacher thinks aloud while writing, showing the strategy step by step. We make our thinking visible, so how we plan, what we say to ourselves when we get stuck, and how we can check our work, and how we encourage ourselves along the way. Memorization. Students learn the mnemonic and what each part stands for. So, for example, if you're using tree, topic sentence, reasons, explain, ending. They practice recalling the steps so the strategy becomes easy to access while they're writing. Scaffolds. This is the guided practice phase and usually the longest one. Students use the strategy with lots of teacher support, prompts, and feedback, often working with peers. So over time, we slowly pull back the scaffolds as they become more confident and independent. Independent writing. So finally, students use the strategy on their own across different writing tasks. The goal is for them to internalize the process so it becomes automatic and they can regulate their own writing without heavy teacher support. So, in many schools currently, students are writing to show learning or writing to master the conventions. In short, they're writing just very brief answers, completing worksheets, or test prep, instead of writing to really think, learn, express, and create meaningful pieces of work that they can share with the world. These tasks are often superficial or even false use of writing. So students get used to experiencing writing as just another school obedience game and not as the actual powerful tool that it is. When writing instruction stresses writing for a real purpose, however, students' writing improves much more. So tasks that are real and meaningful give students a reason to care, a reason to persist, and a reason to stretch their writing. Students should also have the opportunity to write to a real reader, not just the teacher who is the grader. When students are writing for a real audience, it can be really motivational and give real meaning to their hard work. It also gives students practice with adjusting their writing to readers' needs. Kids can learn a lot by seeing models of the type of writing they're being asked to produce. When they see models of writing, they are shown various vocabulary, sentence types, and ways of addressing a reader's organization, and ways of supporting ideas. We teach children the process of writing, typically pre-writing, drafting, and revising, so that they can learn that composing is a series of manageable steps rather than just one shot performance. A process approach helps students generate ideas, organize their thinking, and then return to their drafts to clarify, expand, and correct, which has been shown to improve the quality of their writing. It also reduces the fear of getting it right the first time by separating idea generation from error correction, and it builds the critical academic habit of refining work over time. So you may ask yourself, what does this actually look like in a classroom? So I'm going to walk you through how some of these strategies and principles can be applied to a writing unit in a second grade classroom. In this classroom, we have 3 multilingual learners in varying stages of English acquisition, whose home language is Spanish. So I am calling this unit Save the Bees. And although I'm going to be focusing my presentation primarily on writing, I also wanted to include here how other content areas can be incorporated by weaving together reading, writing, and even science to help students build the background knowledge and vocabulary they'll need to write a strong piece of writing that they'll be really proud of. So the main writing task is going to be for students to write a letter to someone of their choosing to convince them that bees are important and to also provide that person with some things that they can do to help the bees. At the end of the unit, I would actually mail or share students' letters with the person to whom they wrote. During the reading block, I'd share lots of nonfiction books about bees and really point out how the authors give reasons and details to explain why bees are important. And this would happen during those interactive read alouds. So that way, students aren't just learning cool facts about bees, they're also seeing how writers support a main idea, which connects directly to their own writing tasks. Then during science, I plan hands-on activities to really deepen students' background knowledge. So for example, we might have students watch lots of videos showing how plants are pollinated, and then I could even have students build a model together with a group to show how bees help pollinate plants. All of this works together to give students the background knowledge, understanding, and vocabulary that they'll need to write their own piece of persuasive writing. To kick off this unit, I would invite a real live expert to visit our class. So in this case, a beekeeper would be ideal. I would ask the beekeeper to bring in some of their tools or other items that would help them explain their job and what they do. So showing students an abandoned beehive would be very interesting and informative for students. And I would ask the beekeeper to to include information about bees, such as why are bees important, what do bees do, how do they do it, and what would happen if bees didn't exist, as well as what can we do to help the bees. I would also highlight vocabulary words like pollen, pollinators, queen bee, hive, and so on. Explicitly teaching vocabulary is important for multilingual learners because it helps them communicate more clearly, both orally and in written form. So one really helpful strategy is to connect new English words to students' home language. So the meaning sticks and they feel more confident using the words in their own writing. So for example, as we're going over some key vocabulary words for the unit, I might say, this is the word hive. A hive is a structure where honeybees live, they raise their young, and they store their food. In Spanish, hive is colmena. Making that connection helps students tie the new word to something they already know. I can also use these moments to strategically introduce spelling and morphology. So, for instance, with the word smoker, I might remind students that the base word is smoke. And when we add the vowel suffix er, we're going to drop the silent e and then add our suffix er. So I'd also point out that smoke is a magic E syllable type. And I might also remind students that the suffix er can mean a thing that does. So for the word smoker, a smoker is a thing that smokes. A concept map can also be beneficial for multilingual learners. So a concept map is basically a visual organizer that shows how ideas are connected. You start with the big idea in the middle and then branch out to important related ideas, and then add details or examples around those. Concept maps help kids organize new information and see how the main idea connects everything else that they're learning. And they're also flexible enough to use with any content area. They're especially helpful for multilingual learners because the visual layout allows students to see those relationships and how things are related. And teachers can use concept maps before reading to tap into what students already know. And then as they're learning more information throughout the unit, that can be added. For MLs, it's also powerful to include just simple vocabulary words and even drawings or cutouts and pictures to give them multiple ways of accessing the content. So for the second grade assignment, writing assignment that we've been going through, a concept map would be helpful, especially if images and labels are included. It's also an opportunity for the teacher to include translated words from students' home language. So for example, the cognate antenna, I would highlight for students. As I'm building this concept map with students, I would try to include key vocabulary words and concepts that students would need to include for their writing tasks. Knowing the parts of speech and how words work in a sentence really matters, especially for MLs. If an ML already understands grammar in their first language, we can use that to our advantage by making those cross-language connections and pointing out what's the same and what's different. MLs benefit from learning how English sentences are put together and comparing that to the grammar patterns in their own language. An activity like sentence expansion can be really beneficial. So here's an example of what this could look like in our second grade classroom in our B unit. So here kids draw on their knowledge of what they've been learning about bees to expand the sentence, bees are important. I could teach students about the conjunction and to show them how I can turn a very basic sentence into a sentence that's more complex. So it goes from bees are important to bees are important because they make honey to bees are important because they make honey and help plants grow. Multilingual learners really benefit from using graphic organizers and other visuals because these tools help them really organize their ideas in a clear, step-by-step way. The type of organizers that you use, it should match the purpose of the writing. So for example, with my second grade unit, if we're working on a persuasive writing task about bees, I would use a persuasive writing organizer. I'd ask them to come up with 3 reasons why bees are important, and then add details to support each reason. So to build in some additional supports and scaffolds, I would first give them time to say their ideas out loud before they try to write. And I could also offer sentence starters or sentence stems to give them a little extra support as they get their thoughts on paper. So when we teach writing, we want students to know that writing is a process, not a one and done assignment. So composing isn't just sitting down and magically creating this perfect paragraph or piece of writing. It happens in stages. We have the pre-writing, drafting, and revising stage, and that's, oftentimes cyclical. Kids need to hear that even really skilled writers don't get it right the first time. They plan, they write, they reread, and they make lots of changes along the way. It also helps when students don't work in isolation. So, collaboration and collaborative activities can really give them new ideas for what to write about and support for how to improve their writing. One easy way to set this up is to use real student writing samples, both strong and weak, from previous years or other classes, with the student names removed, of course. And students could look at those writing samples together to really offer feedback. That way, they get used to talking about writing um, and revising before they apply those skills to their own work. So I hope that you found something in this presentation that you'll be able to use with your multilingual learners to support them with their writing development. So thanks for watching.